Hello and welcome to Anything DevOps. My name is Vinod, and this is a perfect Sunday to record another short video. This time around, the theme is containers, and I'm going to talk about a specific aspect of containers, which is the build patterns for containerized apps in continuous integration pipeline. Now, that's a long term, and we'll talk about it. But just to let you know, in the past few weeks, we've been talking about continuous testing and especially intelligent automation in continuous testing. If you haven't seen the videos, you can go to Anything DevOps YouTube channel and look at the videos as well. Now, today, as I said, what I'm going to show you is the various build patterns that you can follow for a containerized app. And some of them listed here that we are also going to look in a demo are the first one, where we build the application in a pipeline before creating images and publishing them to a registry. The second pattern is about building an application using a multi-stage Docker file, which means your build, your test, and other tasks basically run inside a container, unlike the first pattern where everything was happening on the host machine before creating the images for the container. And the third and the final one, which is about building in containers. Now, how is this different from the second one, the multi-stage Docker file? The difference is that often you may have a need to copy artifacts out, during the build process or after the build process is completed, tests have run. And in those scenarios, the multi-stage Docker file may limit the ability to copy the data out onto the host. And in that situation, you may need to split the process where one part basically builds the app and the other part copies the artifact out of the container before publishing it to the registry. All right, so again, we have some demo here to show you all of these patterns. So let's just switch over to the browser. Okay, so here is the first build pipeline that I've created, and I'm going to show you what it is composed of. So here in this pipeline, I'm choosing a Node version. It's a JavaScript-based app, so I'm choosing a Node tool version that I want to use. I'm installing the dependencies using npm install. I'm running some unit tests here, and then I create an image uh, from the source code that I have, and finally publish it to a Docker registry. Now, the thing here to stress is that the build is actually happening on the pipeline, and your pipeline could be a hosted VM, it could be a physical machine, it could as well be a container, what have you, right? But it's it's a separate process in its own where you're building in the pipeline and then creating images and publishing it, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to queue this build and look at another pattern, which is slightly different from this, which is using the multi-stage build. So let's look at multi-stage build. In this case, if you look at it, there is no task like npm install, npm test, or using a node version. Why? Because most or all of it is happening inside the container. And how do I know that? Let's look at the source code. So here is the app that I have, and here is the Docker multi-stage file that I have. If you look at it, instead of choosing the node version in the pipeline, I have it as part of my Docker file itself. And so what I'm doing here is choosing a version of Node, copying the source code into the container, setting a default directory inside the container, and then running my npm install and test inside that container. Now, when that happens, um, you know, my app is ready. I can use the content to create an image to be published to a registry. And so what I'm doing is I'm creating a second image which essentially only copies or installs the dependencies and leaves all the test artifact as is, right? And the reason for that is because this is a production image which you want as lean as possible, right? And that's the beauty of multi-stage Docker build, wherein you can specify a set of commands before you create your final image. Um, and it's important from those aspects. So this was our second pattern where everything happened inside a container using a multi-stage build. Let's just go back and queue a build for this as well. Okay, so I'm queuing a build here, and we'll come back to this once we have looked at the third pattern. Now the third pattern, which is this one, is where you still build inside a container like a multi-stage Docker build, but instead of having all of your steps inside a multi-stage Docker file, you build your app and then you copy all of the artifacts that you need outside of the container onto the host. And the reason for that is often you may want to publish test results back to your pipeline and you want access to those files. If you're doing it in a multi-stage, you may lose access to that file because intermediate images are dropped and you don't have access to them. Well, you can copy it to the final image, but the challenge is that your production image becomes heavy, right? So you break the process into two parts, wherein in the first step you build an image, you build your application inside the container, you run test inside the container, you copy those artifacts outside container, then you publish test results, code coverage, or anything else that you wanted outside of that container onto the host. And once you're done, you just publish the bare minimum image that you need to run that application, right? So this is the third pattern. Now we would have loved for the multi-stage Docker file itself to have provided the support for being able to copy those intermediate results through volumes or mounts, but that doesn't exist today, right? So that's the third pattern out here. So these are some of the patterns in which you can build a containerized app. I'm going to queue this build as well. And while this happens, let's just go back to the first one to see if it has completed. So most of the steps have completed. It's trying to push the image to the registry, and it's going to do so. And that's the completion of the pipeline. So if you just go back and look at your Docker Hub registry and see if there are newer images that have come. So you have one image that got posted a few seconds back, and that's the one that the first pipeline actually published. Let's just go back and look at where the second pipeline is right now. So it's now pushing the image to the registry. And once it has done, we're going to go back and look at Docker Hub to see if the image is out there. So that's the second pipeline that has completed. Let's quickly go back, refresh our view, and see if the image has come here. Again, as you can see, we got one more new image just a few seconds back. Now let's see where the third pipeline is. And you can see that the image is already published now. Let's go back to the Docker Hub images. Now this time around the application was different. It was a .NET Core based application. We can go here, look at the tags, and see that we published an image a minute ago. So these are the patterns that we can see around building a containerized app in your CI pipeline. What next? Well, there are plenty of examples or projects that you can look at under anything DevOps and try things for yourself. Um, and if you have any questions or if you'd like to cover any specific aspect around containers, you can reach out at the Twitter account mentioned here, right? Once again, thank you for joining in for this video, and I will see you in a week's time. Thank you.